everyone. So today we're just chatting about why you binge. So for me, for many years, I thought there was something wrong with me. There must have been something in my brain that was not wired correctly because why was I struggling with binge eating when all of my friends clearly weren't? I thought if I could control the way I eat by managing and eliminating certain foods, that it would make it better, like cutting out sugar and carbohydrates. And unfortunately, that actually made it worse for me, and I couldn't understand why that was because I was putting so much control on to what I ate that it should have actually quietened down my binge episodes. But it actually, the more stricter I got, the more I binged, and I really didn't understand where they came from. So it took me many years to understand why a person actually goes through a binge and where that uncontrollable thing comes from. If you've been reading my content, you know that I talk about the food zombies, and the food zombie is basically that thing that just takes over your mind, and you almost in a trance, and you don't even register what you're doing. So for me, my food zombies used to take over all the time, and it took me many years to understand why that is. And today I'm going to explain to you why we end up binging and what we can do about it. So the reason why we binge is because we have an urge to binge. That's as simple as that. There's an uncontrollable voice or urge in your mind telling you that you need to eat. Now, there are three different reasons why these urges have come along throughout your life, maybe. The first one is actually like very interesting, and this is where I mostly tripped up, and that one is hunger. So with me being so restrictive on pretty much eating salad and tea and like very little food, has put me into a space where my body was hungry, and the only way my body knew it would get food is through a binge. So making sure that you really always check that you are not actually leading into a space of hunger, because this is where you will find, and this is where most of my clients, almost 70% of my clients, once we sort out their hunger factors and get the nutrition through properly, this is where most of the binges actually start dwindling away. The second reason for an urge is emotional. So here we have our boredom, we have our needing comfort, anger, even happy emotions can actually lead to us being in a space where we binge. And there is a lot of things that we can do, but if we don't understand that that comes from an emotional space, it's going to be really difficult for us to even understand that this trigger is emotional. The third one, and this is where most people sit if they're not in the hunger phase, is actually habit. So habit is what actually is a repeated action that we repeat day to day. So usually what happens is we've initially triggered by either hunger or emotions. We get this beautiful rush of endorphins and serotonin while we binge, and that effort basically repeats itself. And every time we binge, we almost get that satisfaction from the binge itself. And that is how we hardwire our brains to know the pleasure that we get from the binge is so amazing that we keep going back to that. And usually that's because of the relief we're getting from all the food that we ate. It's also the relief that we're getting from that emotional perspective, where we are making ourselves feel better with food instead of dealing with the emotion itself. So repeatedly for many years, we satisfy either our hunger or our emotional needs with a binge, and eventually that becomes so easy, such an easy path to follow. So the way for us to break away from binge eating is obviously to manage the urge. Now, the urge, as I said before, is just a little voice, that food zombie talking to you, telling you you need to binge. Often this food zombie actually comes along before the binge, and that even triggers it more. So a lot of my clients actually, they get a voice in the beginning of, before they've even thought about food, they start thinking about not binging. And because they have that not binging, not being perfect on their diet, they resist it so much that it's so easy to go through with it. So the key here is not to resist the urge, but to work with the urge and understand why it's there. And if you can start recognizing that it's there, because often we feel like it just came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. There has definitely been some form of mental play about that a binge is a good idea. So when you are able to recognize that that thought is there, and you are able to argue with that thought, not in a fight kind of way, but just almost like, there you are, I see what you're doing, and allowing yourself to observe that space and then letting it go and not taking action on that urge. That is when we are able to stop binge eating. That is when we are able to start moving away from the path of reacting in a binge and moving into the path of recognizing where we are, recognizing that we are either like in a form of habit, emotion, or in a space of hunger, and we are able to actually start dealing with our triggers, which is the urge to binge. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will chat to you in the next video.